And another educational chess game, I have black. My opponent is rated 1992, and he starts with the pawn to e4. I'm going to play my Caro-Kann defense, c6. I'm facing an Indian opponent. He plays knight to c3, so I push d5. And he plays knight to f3. I'm going to take on e4 and then play knight to f6. So there we go, knight to f6. If he takes, I'll recapture with the pawn. Sure, that doubles my pawns, but when I kingside castling, I'll have a king that's better protected than his in the middle game. In the end game, having doubled pawns here is more of a problem because I won't be able to create any passed pawns. Whereas my opponent will have a majority of 4 pawns against 3, which could create a passed pawn. But he's hesitating, you see, he's hesitating to take this knight on f6. He takes. So we're actually going to see this structure appear, the doubled pawns. So this majority of 4 against 3 can't create passed pawns in the endgame. Not by natural means, whereas his majority of 4 against 3 can create a pawn, because in a king endgame, for example, he could play d4, then c4, then d5. And if there's a capture, he'll recapture and have a pawn supported by his king. So I have to avoid king endgames. He plays bishop to c4. I'm going to place my bishop on d6 naturally to kingside castling. I need to position my pieces toward his future kingside castling. Now, it's not certain yet that he'll castle kingside, but you see he does. And now kingside castling. I already have both bishops naturally aiming toward his kingside castling. But since I have one more pawn, sometimes I can mobilize the f pawn or the h pawn to advance and help me attack his kingside castling. So my extra pawn can help me defend my king, but it can also help me attack his king. He plays the pawn to d4. In the end, his knight on f3 isn't doing much because the pawn on f6 prevents this knight from getting closer. I could come and pin with f4. Maybe he'll play h3. For now, what are my candidate moves? Rook e8, the rook on the file, knight d7 as well. Notably with rook e8, knight d7, we can then play knight f8 and bring it to g6. Bring the knight a bit closer. But there are other somewhat strange moves like knight a6. I'm not afraid if he takes, he'll break my pawn structure, but I'll have the pair of bishops, which could be interesting. And on knight a6, if he doesn't take, my knight can come back to c7, sometimes return to the d5 square or the e6 square, and then look for the f4 square. There can be some fun paths for this knight. All right, I'm going to play knight a6. It was the French champion Marc'Andria Maurizzi who showed me this idea with knight a6. I knew the idea knight d7, rook e8, knight f8, knight g6, which I'd seen in many games. But knight a6, Marc'Andria liked it because the knight could be recycled along new paths where the knight could surprise the opponent. This knight can actually have a lot of possibilities in the end. It's quite strange to put it on the edge, but when it comes back, it will be interesting. The rook comes to e1, so k will leave 7. Maybe the pin h takes g4 would still be interesting. h3 takes h5. Will he want to play g4? I don't think so. But why don't I go to g4 right away? Because I'm actually waiting for him to play h3. I know some ideas with bishop f5 when he's played h3, bishop f5, queen d7, then some bishop sacrifices. Bishop takes, pawn takes, the queen takes back. With the bishop there, if I can destabilize his knight, it creates a very strong attack. So he played bishop b3. He's going to want to play c4. After all, I can play bishop g4, and on h3, come to f5. That's what I'm going to do. Bishop g4 with the idea of queen d7. The rooks that go to e8 and the knight, we'll see how it gets there. He plays c4. Now he's threatening c5. Because my bishop doesn't have a square, I'll have to play knight e6, and on c5, the bishop can retreat to c7. After playing the move knight to e6, he might potentially try to play d5 in response. But maybe we could consider knight g5 to put even more pressure on the pinned knight, or maybe there is something else entirely. Let's go ahead and proceed with the move knight to e6 for now. Am I threatening knight takes d4? His knight can't take back. If he recaptures with the queen, I take his knight. Then we take on h2 with check and I grab his queen. So here the real threat is knight takes d4. You see, this knight is going to create threats. He plays bishop e3. He blocked the threat. So I'm looking at knight g5. He'll go bishop takes, pawn takes. Is my pawn better on g5 than on f6? That's not certain. Maybe just qc7. On c5, bishop takes h2 with check. And then I come back to f4. And you see how my pieces are gradually positioning themselves against his king. So it's true that he has this majority of pawns on the other side, but he still has to deal with his king. So he plays h3, and here I'm hesitating between f5 to keep the pin or f5 to keep the possibility of capturing the h3 pawn in particular. If we consider f5, then on d5 maybe we could have the knight to f4, although I don't know which of these options is better. On the other hand, this pin is clearly bothering him right now. His queen can't go fight the way she'd like to. And if I play f5, he might play c2, maybe to offer a bishop's exchange, so I'm going to play f5. I'm still going to keep the pin. The rooks can be placed on the D and E files. That's very good. I'm going to play my knight to the f4 square, and if he takes it, I will have to recapture. This move allows me to attack the rook, which might then come down to the c2 square, and I am just looking at how to proceed from there. I'm going to put a rook on d8 facing his queen. You never know. If the file opens up, that's always something to gain. Actually, I have bishop to b4, which is good. Bishop to b4, I hadn't seen it, but this move is really good. He might play c5 now. But bishop to b4 was very interesting. Because after queen to d2, it blocked the defense of the pawn on d4. Knight takes on d4 maybe, or the capture. If he recaptures with the queen, I destroy his castling. How could I have missed bishop b4? But now it's a 5 that I can take, and if rook takes, knight recaptures, and the pawn can't take back because of the queen. So actually the rook on d8 isn't so bad. So there it is. He played d5, but he won't be able to take my knight because there will be bishop and check if I play bishop b4 now and he plays bishop d2, capture, queen takes, bishop takes knight, that destroys his castling. Bishop b4, he won't be able to play bishop d2, so what will he play? Rook f1, that makes his rook retreat. That's not bad. Let's play bishop b4, and I reveal the queen-rook alignment. I'm not afraid of captures on a7. There will definitely be b6 with the bishop attacking afterwards. The only thing is the pawn on e5. I can't get rid of it. Also, if there's a capture, it opens the rook onto my own queen. So now there's a tension where the rook and queen facing each other prevent us from releasing that tension. I'm going to have to improve my knight. Maybe still play knight g5 or knight f4. Knight g5, maybe he'll play bishop's takes and then we take, but I'll have the bishop on the dark squares. So it will be harder for him to achieve the d6 push because he won't have the dark square bishop anymore. So he played rook f1, he saw it. Now I do not really see what else to do. I will play knight g5. So I don't see any other move for him than to give up the pair of bishops with bishop takes knight. So my bishop on the dark square, he can push it back with a3 to regain the 1 square. But I'll come to d6. But in d6, there will be the c5 push, and if my bishop moves, then the d6 push afterwards. Well, but first he has to solve the problem with his knight. So he took, so I take back, and now maybe he'll play a3 against me. No, he plays g4, so bishop g6. I don't really have a choice. I think I really don't have a choice. I'm looking at the entries on f4. What does that give? He takes and I have nothing. If I play bishop d6, I can't go and checkmate Selikaz's knight. No, he's telling me that he's going to win the g5 pawn afterwards. I do not even know if he'll be able to win it. Bishop g6, knight takes g5, queen f4, the knight moves, bishop d6 after. If he comes back to f3, there will be bishop e4. I do not think he can really win the pawn on g5, because here I have the bishop on the black square, and it has opened up this beautiful black diagonal. So knight takes g5. You see, I play queen f4 right away. If he comes back to f3, bishop e4, and if not, bishop d6 afterwards to play along the diagonal. And if he doesn't take on g5, maybe I'll go break up his kingside a bit with the h5 push. Try to create some damage. So there, in this position, he still has his majority of pawns, but for the moment, he has trouble creating a passed pawn. And I have the pair of bishops, the only bishop on a black square, and the g4 push has weakened the defenses of his kingside anyway, whereas my kingside is well defended, so it's true that there is this pawn g5 and prize. But can he really take it? I doubt it. I think queen f4 will hurt him a lot right after. He plays a3, and he's right to play this move first, so that I can't play qf4, and then bd6. So I'm still looking at queen f4. He takes my bishop. What do I have? Nothing at all. If I play bishop e4, nothing happens. He can protect his knight or move it. And unfortunately, if I play bishop d6, I get hit with c5. Then I have bishop f4, which attacks his rook, but I get hit with d6. He will have managed to get his passed pawn. Maybe bishop c5 then? Plus, there's the pin, so I'm threatening queen g3 check, king moves, and queen takes h3. The play on the dark squares is beautiful with this move bishops c5. On knight takes g5, queen g3 check, king h1, I won't be able to take the pawn because the knight is defending. But maybe I can push back this knight. He plays f3. You see, he wants to activate his majority with b4, c5, d6, but it's too late. Queen g3 check, king h1, queen takes h3 check. He has to come back to the g file. Queen takes g4 check, followed by a bishop to e4, I think. So he'll play knight h2. But the dark squares, bishop to d6, and he can't even play f4 if he has the pawn on g5. Well, he'll probably play it eventually, but then there will be bishop takes afterwards. I'm also looking at other moves, bishop to e4 check. If I play f3, now bishop to d6, but maybe he can defend with rook to f2. No, we'll play bishop to d6 right away. I don't see how he defends. He has to play f4, bishop takes, and sacrifice the exchange with the rook. But I don't even feel like playing bishop takes f4 anymore. Bishop to e4 check is interesting too. What is he going to do? Bishop e4, check. He can always put the rook or play king g1. No, bishop takes f4 is enough. I could play bishop e4 afterwards. I'm attacking the rook and threatening a deadly checkmate. So he can play rook to c2 or give up the exchange, but it's true he has rook to c2. Oh no, rook to c2, there's the other bishop. No, but the pair of bishops is just brutal. You see, he didn't manage to play with his majority of pawns. His light-squared bishop is trapped. Now he plays queen d2, but he didn't even see that his queen was hanging. He can't take the move back. It's not possible. Well, that kind of spoils the end of the game, but anyway, it was totally winning for me. And now he's going to resign. There you go, he resigned. The computer gives me a score of 91% versus 76% for my opponent. Of course, when he gave up the queen, his percentage dropped sharply. And you can see that my opponent was rated 1985, but the computer estimates that he played like a player rated 1850. The computer also shows that the opening was well played by both sides, but the middle game was played rather dubiously by my opponent and well played on my part. So let's analyze this game. e4, c6. He plays nc3, so the d5 push. He plays nf3, then I take on d4, and I want to bring about this pawn structure that appeared in the game, np-pp. I know I have doubled pawns. I know that's not great in endgames, but I also know that in the middle game, my king will be much better protected than his. And that's the element I'm playing on. He plays bishop c4, so bishop d6. Here, he's going to do the kingside castling, so I do the same for now. The opening is proceeding normally. Now she plays d4. And here, it's a critical moment. This is the first moment where I really thought, because there are a lot of candidate moves, I can play f4, that's a good move. I can also put the rook on e8, that's also a good move. Knight d7 is also possible, but I played knight a6 because I remembered in an analysis with Marc'Andria Maurizzi, the French champion and the youngest French grandmaster, where he explained that he played this variation with knight f6 and recapturing the pawn on f6, this pawn structure, and that he liked playing this knight move to a6 because the knight could find some rather strange paths for the opponent, quite hard to predict for the opponent, and the opponent was often a bit thrown off. That's actually the right word for it, being unseated when facing a knight. If the bishop takes or recaptures, the black pawn structure is damaged, but in reality, the white square bishop can find compensation. And by the way, you can see on the evaluation bar to the left of the chessboard that we're still roughly equal. So my opponent played rook e1, placing his rook in the center on the open file, knight c7. He plays bishop b3 to free the c-pawn and try to activate his pawn majority. That's what he understood. Bishop g4, the pin now, c4 is played. And here I played knight e6. So now there are threats of capturing the knight and then taking the pawn on d4, or the other way around actually. Knight takes d4, queen takes, bishop takes knight on f3, pawn takes, and bishop takes h2 check to catch his queen. Well, he saw it, he played bishop e3, and here I still didn't have the idea to play bishop b4, which is a good move, bishop b4. I got this idea later in the game because after bishop b4, the rook is awkward. If it comes to e2, there's this capture of the knight that destroys castling. And if the bishop retreats to d2, we can take. If his queen takes, we break the castling and the knight can't take. And on top of that, the d4 pawn will become vulnerable. You can also see the evaluation bar on the left. It turns completely black. That means after fb4, he's forced to play rook f1. But I didn't have that idea in the position because my bishop was naturally aiming at his castling, and that's where my focus was. So I didn't play fb4 and instead played qc7. I'm threatening to capture on h2, so he plays h3. I retreat to h5 to keep pressure on the knight on f3. He plays rook c1, bringing his rook into the fight against my queen. Rook d8, I do the same. You can see that both players have developed well so far. There's really no problem. But he wants to activate his majority of pawns and plays d5. c5 was better, even if there is no problem for black. The computer, for example, suggests bishop h2 check, then bringing the bishop back to f4. It also shows that bishop o7 might be possible, but why couldn't we take on c5? Because there would be an intermediate bishop takes knight. You see, after bishop takes c5, I was thinking that after the exchange I could recapture with the knight since the d4 pawn is pinned on the file, but he can play bishop takes e6 first. So yes, on c5, I can't take that pawn on c5, but I can go to e7, to f4, or give a little check on h2. In the position, it was actually the other pawn that was played. He played d5. And now this idea of bishop to b4 came to me. The rook is destabilized. It can't stay on the file. Rook e2, we can take the knight and destroy. Queen d2, I've already explained to you what happens in that square as well. So he played the best move, which is rook f1. He actually took some time. Here I brought the knight to g5. He takes my knight. I was threatening to destroy his castling. Then we take. And here he played g4. During the game, I thought, this move looks really ugly, but in reality, it's the computer's best move. It's the move that guarantees equality for the computer. It's this push to g4. Because you have to understand that I'm threatening queen f4 with captures by the knight on f3, and when my queen is on f4, my bishop can come back to d6. So he plays g4 to get rid of the pin, bishop to g6, and there he cannot take the g5 pawn. He didn't do it, by the way. On knight takes g5, queen f4 with the idea of bishop to d6 behind it. If the knight comes to f3, bishop to e4, and it's over. You can try to defend by moving your king to the g2 square, but it might not be enough. The bishop can come to d6, threatening mate with the knight pinned. You can also play f5 to try to open the f-file so my rooks can join the fight as well. So he doesn't take on g5 and plays a 3. But actually here he absolutely had to play c5. After that, I have to take the pawn on d5. But he played a 3, so the bishop goes to c5, and the bishop of the dark square, the piece he doesn't have, becomes formidable on this diagonal with the threat of coming to g3. He allowed me this entry, but if he had played king g2 to prevent me from entering on g3, bishop takes e4. With constant ideas of queen f4 and bishop d6, a devastating attack with the pair of bishops, the queen d on the open diagonals, against his castled king. But he played bishop a2, and you have to understand, he wants to mobilize his majority. He wants to play b4, push back my bishop, then c5, then d6. But he didn't see this idea of queen g3. So queen g3 check, and at this point it's over for him. Rook h1, queen takes h3 check. He brings the knight back to h2, bishop d6. He pushes the pawn to f4. That's all he can do. Bishop takes. And as you saw, he played queen d2. He loses the queen, and he resigns. But in reality, nothing can save him. If he plays, for example, rook c2, I can already take his rook, but the best move is bishop e4 check. And after king g1, I have queen g3 check. With mate in 2 moves, he'll have to put the rook and I take it, and it's mate. The best move, according to the computer, is to play rook takes bishops. That's the most resilient move for white. But after pawn takes, of course, I have an extra exchange. I have more pawns, and his king is very weak. You can see it, by the way, the analysis bar is completely black. So even if he hadn't given up the queen, here it was already completely lost. So it was a very instructive game, strategically speaking. I don't know what you thought about it, but you can leave me comments, likes, share the video, support the channel, and we'll meet again soon for new adventures on the chessboard. Goodbye, everyone.